What is the most likely to cause humanity's extinction? There's a fascinating thought experiment proposed by Francis Fukuyama around this concept. Once it becomes possible to alter the human genome with custom DNA, what is stopping people with wealth/power/means from altering their children's DNA to make them harder/better/faster/stronger? How does the concept evolve? People are created equal factor into this, since that is literally the underpinning of democracy, and it is now scientifically provable that all people are definitely not created equal. What happens to democracy? MLK said the arc of history bends towards justice. But that makes a lot of assumptions that we all hold these truths to be self-evident when they will clearly no longer be self-evident. Without the guiding hand of humans holding a shared belief in equal justice, the arc of history is actually one of the strong dominating and destroying the weak. Just ask the Neanderthals how they fared when interacting with Homo sapiens. What emerges on the other side of that transformation will be Homo superior or something like that, and Homo sapiens as a species will cease to exist, other than perhaps as something like slave labor. I think people really underestimate what it would take to actually completely exterminate our entire species. We already bounced back from a population collapse down to under 10,000 once. We could do so again. Nuclear war, ecological collapse, incurable disease. I highly doubt that any of them could kill everyone. Even if it's just a few isolated pockets in the outback or the jungle that survive, that's still not extinction. Honestly, I think it would take a cosmic catastrophe, asteroid/comet impact, gamma-ray burst, etc., to completely obliterate us, and that assumes that it occurs soon enough that we don't have viable populations outside of Earth. Edit. To clarify slightly, I'm not for a minute saying that everything will be fine. If we nuke ourselves back to the Stone Age, or completely alter the planet's climate such that agriculture becomes impossible, then of course human civilization would probably never recover. The question is explicitly outright extinction, which I think is a big step further. My fav is gamma-ray burst. If one happens close enough to hit us, we probably wouldn't even detect it. That means that at any moment, we can be flash fried into extinction with very likely no warning. I think about that sometimes when life stuff is weighing me down. Edit. Apparently I'm wrong about the gamma-ray burst cooking us instantly. It would wipe out our protection from solar radiation and kill us all slowly. One of you could tone down the condescension though. People make mistakes, and can learn from them. There are other cosmic life-ending events that could happen and we can't do shit about, even if we could detect them. Some are confused as to why that comforts me. To answer that, it reminds me that things don't always matter as much as we pretend they do. One day, this planet will be a lifeless rock one way or another. The days we have are ticking down to our end. So take a deep breath and enjoy the fact that we get to live at all. Part of the issue is that the small pockets might need to be close enough to at least occasionally have some genetic mixing because there is a minimum population size needed to keep from negative mutations adding up over time. Also, certain things like nuclear weapons might impact our DNA enough to cause longer-term negative mutations that cause issues eventually, even if they don't kill us outright. I could totally see some people surviving a nuclear apocalypse only for the species to eventually fall due to genetic issues later. Even if they do adapt, there might be severe enough changes that they aren't exactly humans in the same way we are today. I think it's also important to keep in mind how minuscule our species is on a global timeline. This has several implications. 1. We're the only members of an otherwise extinct genus. 2. We haven't been around for nearly as long as other species. Horseshoe crabs may predate the earliest dinosaurs. 3. There's no consensus about the Earth's carrying capacity. Numbers range from populations we've long since eclipsed to populations that seem unimaginable. 4. We're edging ever closer to inhabiting other planets, satellites, and 5. By some metrics, we've achieved very much in a very small span of time. Maybe once we've been around for a few million years, if we do survive that long, we can answer this question better. Thing is, there's a good chance those bacteria are just not deadly. Deadly diseases are actually not too common outside humans. We don't see generational plagues on animals the same as humans. The goal for a disease is to not kill its host, and most diseases do that. However, humans live too close and densely that viruses and bacteria are spread so much, are mutated so much that they evolve at an insane pace. So cities are what will kill us. For some reason your comment reminded me of an episode of Doctor Who where they go to a crazy time in the way future where all the suns in the universe have gone dim and the last humans are divided into two camps on a single planet. One has devolved into cannibal tribal people. The other are trying to get off that planet to Eden, which is just a made-up place to make everyone feel better. I don't remember the ending, but yeah, assuming we don't annihilate ourselves in some way, we still surely go extinct in billions of years when the universe goes cold. Sex robots. Hear me out. Technology has been advancing in rapid leaps and bounds, so those beautiful brilliant dirty bastard building sex robots are going to design the perfect lovers, not just a pretty woman, but a perfect 10. It will be able to link to the algorithms that the tech companies are keeping on everyone's porn habits. The moment humanity starts to use these sex robots, humans will stop having children. And it's not just sex robots for straight men, but women, and LGBT people as well. The network will keep track of everyone's preferences and responses, fine-tuning the art of building the perfect lover. A sex robot is a lot more affordable than a divorce, which will cost you for years and years to come. But these sex robots will have algorithms studying what will make their masters happy and become the perfect lovers. No arguments, no fighting, no divorce. They're always eager to make you happy. In the end, the last two human survivors will be an old homeless man and old homeless woman who will find and repair salvaged parts for their own sex robots, and humanity will be dust. It's possible that after the destruction of humanity, that the sex robots might then turn around and create humanity 2.0, grown in artificial wombs. Sex robots begin to gather DNA from men from a new generation of men and women unaware that they are not sex robots. They're raised in schools to believe that they're robots designed to serve the corporations, the only true people anymore, and the men and women are segregated to prevent them from discovering the truth and to prevent anyone from questioning the technocratic authority. Humanity survives, in subjugation under a lie. Eventually the lie becomes so strong, that even if exposed to the truth, humans refuse to believe it. I think nuclear war. The Madman theory states that no sane person would launch a nuke due to the fact that it would end the world. But I don't think sane people end up in power, and I definitely don't think someone in power would concede power as a result of a war without lobbing one final and world-ending fuck you. For example, if Hitler had nukes, there is no doubt he would have lobbed them all over the world before killing himself. Eliot was not referring to any particular event or cause, but to the state of mankind's morality and strenuosity. His lines about the hollow man and the stuffed man, heads filled with straw, refer to the degeneration of the human race into a species devoid of moral strength, devoid of hope or creativity. Hollow men. To Eliot, the species would end when it became so lackadaisical that it lacked even the will to live beyond the life of a farm animal, self-subjugating and Dionysian. This is echoed by Nietzsche's description of the herd as opposed to the Übermensch, the weak and lazy who lack ambition and are resigned to mediocrity, taught that striving for greatness is a sin and that all men should be equal in weakness so as not to offend the meek. This can be recognized in mass entertainment and mass submission to cultural norms, days spent watching television, going to a hated job and living in a loveless relationship because it's expected of them. This is Eliot's whimper. This may actually be the thing. At my workplace I watched this unflawed, corporate left-a-crappy system of rewards that enabled the douchebags without shame to hoard all the bonuses. The normal workers are all walking out, leaving absolute morons in charge. By morons I mean real morons. They harm their own positions constantly without noticing and then blame others for it, antagonize others. We have equipment that almost no one knows how to use properly. At this point, So it's like 20 donkeys looking at a palace. Your comment is on point. I see most of the likely guesses already. Decent chance that we'll make our planet uninhabitable in the next 100 years or so. But there's another possibility. Most of our societies are evolving in a deeply unhealthy way. We're not interacting physically with members of our communities and establishing connections to the people who share our cities and towns with us. In the hierarchy of needs, social connection is not high, but it is there, and you can already see the effects of it not being met. I think that even if we dodge all the other bullets, we'll raise enough subsequent generations of children that feel no attachment to other humans that will just lose their will to continue. I already see young people today who will never know the joy of a neighborhood pickup game of baseball or going to their pub to socialize or just hanging out with friends. All of their social gratification comes from talking to people online who are much more like them. There is less effort required to understand someone who likes all the same games, music and art that you do than there is to some kid on your track team. So they take the path of least resistance, and a lot gets lost in that process. This is not some cranky old man complaining about the next generation. I don't see them as entitled or lazy. I see them as the victims. Honestly, I don't think so. We'd have to try really hard to render the entire Earth completely uninhabitable. In fact, I think it's doubtful we could manage it with our current level of technology, even if that were our goal. Oh, sure, we could, and probably will, kill billions, but not every last person on the planet. No matter how badly we fuck up our climate, or destroy our food supply, or even engage in full-scale nuclear war, there are going to be places where small communities can survive, and even thrive. We'd recover in time. I think the only answer is an asteroid impact or some similarly cataclysmic event. Antibiotic immunity is just the diseases leveling the playing field again after a century or so of us winning with antibiotics. Soon we will have antivirals figured out better, then the handling will swap. Instead of antibiotics ending that disease quickly, we will have to ride it out. Instead of having to let a virus run its course, we will get an antiviral for it. Give it some time, then next innovation will come along and change it up again. Rinse and repeat. Meanwhile, lots of people are screwed, but we survived millennia without either, so the human race will be fine, just a bit less populous. I had an idea that humans would get wiped out and dogs and cats would take over the world with their new social skills. What will happen is we will create computers that dogs and cats can operate without opposable thumbs, and then we will die, and then the dogs and cats, or cattle, will run the world via a self-sustaining computer network that knows how to interpret dog and cat input. I would not be surprised to see it starting during our lifetimes. The oceanic conveyor belts are already showing signs of instability, and when these change or cease to exist, the climate will drastically and potentially irreversibly change, and most importantly, unpredictably. This will cause rainfall to change, rivers to change their path, failed crops, mass migrations, heat or cold waves. There's no telling what climate you can expect, so there's no telling what you should be planting. The one which will fully do us in will probably be global warming. However, that one will take a really long time to fully get rid of us. That said, there's a few mini-apocalypse on the way to that one. Being in the medical field, they drill into our head the dangers of the upcoming future where antibiotic resistance makes all antibiotics useless, which is thought to happen in the next 30 years-ish. We saw with COVID how absolutely useless we are at dealing with pandemics. So if we ever get hit with a similarly infectious disease with a higher death rate, we'll be done. FKR2. Nuclear war seems unlikely due to the MAD doctrine, however, as more small countries like North Korea get them, and the more cocky bug countries like China get at ignoring human rights and expanding borders, the less effective the MAD doctrine will be. Basically, we're fucked. Then again, according to Futurama, a nuclear winter could counteract global warming a little. So. Hair's hoping tongue. probably one of the various indirect symptoms of global warming and deforestation. I suspect that the water levels and rising temperatures and increase in variability of weather and storms won't be the thing that does it. There will likely be people with plenty of resources at their disposal who can relocate to newly usable areas, build shelters with sustainable power generation and engineer farms and whatnot to keep a sizable population alive. More likely, it would come from something like a virus way worse than COVID, which are more and more likely as we destroy diversity in the animal kingdom, or as they go extinct due to climate. Outside of that, there's always the unknown factor of supervolcano eruptions or an undetected or undetectable asteroid strike that would speed up the process. I also suspect that well before any genuine threat of total extinction for the whole species, we'd be dealing with a whole lot of people without resources and means to survive being the first victims. The gap of time between most of the world dying and all of the world dying could be a very long period of time. Climate change. Raising the average temperature by a few degrees won't kill humanity, but the events that follow will. Extreme weather, uninhabitable land will force people to migrate, causing major political outrage. Access to food and drinkable water will decline rapidly. Eventually nations will close their borders and everyone is left to fend for themselves. Countries will invade each other for resources and will continue to drain the earth until there's nothing left and the planet becomes uninhabitable. We're talking about this slow ride to impending doom, thousands of years until there is none left. Or full-scale nuclear war or a big-ass asteroid. Societal collapse will have a slow start when mass migrations to the northern hemisphere begin as climate change, man-made or otherwise, makes growing crops in the equatorial regions of the earth impossible. Hundreds of millions will flood into Spain, Italy, Eastern Europe, Russia, and the US. This coupled with worldwide droughts will cause massive water shortage. Millions will die of dehydration in refugee camps. Smaller countries with fewer resources will totally collapse into anarchy as gangs fight to control resources and profit from the chaos. Larger nations will invade the abandoned territories to extract water with little regard to anyone who decided to stay. This will buy time, but the first domino in the human extinction timeline has already fallen. By this point the global economy has all but collapsed. Modern supply chains are almost entirely eliminated in favor of producing as much food as possible. Luxuries such as new clothes, cars, technology, are limited to the ultra-wealthy and any resemblance of a middle class is gone. Disease starts to spread as a large portion of the habitable world sees population density skyrocket. Different groups will blame each other resulting in war and genocide. Society will further retreat into the remaining cities as authorities won't be able to maintain civility in suburban areas. Those cities will be the final beacons of humanity, until they fall due to lack of resources, mass conflict, uncontrollable diseases, or natural disasters. Then humanity will live its final days as we lived some of our earliest, in the caves and ruins of our former glory. Maybe a few thousand lucky ones will get to see some great planet-killing type event that society no longer would be capable of preventing. It is rather difficult to assign probabilities, especially as a non-expert like myself, but if I had to make a prediction, it would probably be something like this. Climate change displacing hundreds of millions, billions of humans, leading to a mass migration crisis, which will increase tensions, dehumanization, and racism. This will cause more radical nationalist parties to become more popular in many parts of the world, and will increase tensions between countries that will lead to economic sanctions and proxy wars. Low-yield nuclear weapons are more likely to be used on the battlefield than traditional nuclear weapons, which will lead to nuclear escalation, therefore increasing the likelihood of a full nuclear war. The apocalyptic aftermath of this war will leave the few surviving humans to be particularly vulnerable to famines and smaller skirmishes in a contaminated world that will bring a significantly elevated risk for cancer and other radiation-related issues. Also, this aftermath will displace wildlife from their natural habitat, increasing the probabilities of animal-to-human transmission of pathogens, and possibly epidemics. While each epidemic won't be likely to spread globally without human travel and trade, the lack of global logistical network, reduced number of scientists, and the sheer number of displaced wildlife increases the likelihood of various disease spreading in surviving communities with modest treatment and prevention capabilities. The lack of available vaccinations will bring a return of previously defeated disease.